Hello YouTube, this is Sam Gerrans from Qur'anic.com. Today is Thursday the 31st of December 2020. So it's the last day of 2020, and I just thought, in honor of the the end of this interesting year, the year when the ruling elite really made their plans plain, where they opened their hand even to the people, or a lot of people who were quite happy under the old plantation, introducing them to the new plantation. I thought I'd finish up with a shorter than usual video, and it's not exactly a book review, but it's a book recommendation, because it can seem really tough, and it can seem like, you know, the evil men prosper and all the rest of it. So I'm going to introduce you to a new friend of mine, and this chap's name is Boethius, and here's the book. I'll just show it to you. Boethius, The Consolation of Philosophy. Now, I'm not one of these people. I don't sort of have special links to Amazon or anything. This is nothing, I don't have I've got no interest in it at all, financially or anything like that. So just look up the book. I'll put the name in the drop down below. Boethius, The Consolation of Philosophy. Now, it sounds complicated. Boethius is kind of weird name. Consolation, perhaps not such a common word. And philosophy, one of these words which is supposed to be very complicated. But there isn't much complicated about this. I mean, it's worth concentrating when you read it. But Boethius was a 5th century Roman, highly placed bureaucrat. And as they say, how are the mighty fallen? Well, he came down from his very high place as a favorite of the then Roman ruler, who was actually not of the Roman line, but this is after the fall of Rome, so he was from the sort of the hordes that had taken over Rome. Actually, it hadn't so much taken over as come to join, but anyway, that's a different story. And he had an interesting life. He was born into a very well-to-do family, but his father died, and then he was adopted then by another well-to-do family. And I don't quite know how adoption worked at that time in the Roman system, but certainly prior to that, adoption was in some ways, as far as I understand it, took precedence over natural birth. So, for example, if the Caesar adopted you, it didn't mean that you were some sort of bolt-on, add-on sprog to the family. It was a very high position indeed. So he was adopted by a very good man and had a fantastic education and all this. But long story short, to put it into colloquial English, he came a cropper of the Caesar and ended up in the slammer, waiting for death. And he knew he was going to die, and it was going to be a very unpleasant death. I don't know quite what happened to the Roman thing of just chopping your head off if you were a Roman citizen. Apparently he was bludgeoned to death. It was nasty. Whilst he was waiting for this certain death, although he was a Christian, or is claimed by the Christians to have been a Christian, he wasn't much interested in Christianity at this point. He returned to philosophy, and philosophy is really just reasoning out truth as opposed to just accepting dogma. And consolation just means comfort. So you could call this the comfort of reason. In it, he really seeks to answer the question of why is it that evil men seem to do so well? And why is there so much unfairness in the world? Why does God allow evil? And I suppose the question of predestination over the freedom of the will. Bits of it are a bit tricky, I will admit that. Bits of it need to be read a couple of times. If you get this edition, which is the Oxford World's Classics, it's got a very good introduction, not all of which will be relevant to you or to me, but to students of, I suppose, at university studying the Roman classics, etc. However, this book has the distinction of being the only book, well, at least that I know of, that was translated into English into different types of English, by two different ruling monarchs in England. Alfred the Great of Wessex and Queen Elizabeth I, both themselves translated this book into English. They thought so highly of this book that they translated it themselves. It's not that they just commissioned a translation. They took the time out from a busy schedule to translate this book into English. Now, of course, if you read it, I found, as somebody who knows the Qur'an very well, that it reads like a commentary on aspects of the Qur'an. For example, the weakness. The plan of the shaitan is weak, and you really realize how weak the plan of evil men is through reading this. I won't read bits to you from it. Just it's a short book. Just if you're interested in really answering this question of the evil men, the rich men, the ruling elite of today, and how weak actually in some ways they are. Of course, if you go to Epictetus with he chained his leg to the post or whatever it is. He said that Caesar could chain his leg, but he couldn't make him dislike it. And but it isn't quite in that vein. It's not a sort of mental trick. This is more reasoning it through to its proper end, and understanding that it is only in God that one really has freedom and true happiness. He doesn't quite say virtue is its own reward, but he gets pretty close to it. You may find this strange coming from a man who came from a pagan background, although he was nominally, I don't know to what degree he was a Christian, but you'll find that critics try to sort of overlay this with a Christianesque sort of matrix, but it isn't there. It's more of a traditional Roman coming from the Greek background, rather than any from a pagan background rather than from any nominal Christian point of view. But his reasoning is you may find it interesting, I certainly did, to see how monotheistic this book is. Now, it doesn't mean that he doesn't overspeak, or from the Qur'anic point of view. In one particular place he does. However, if you're the sort of person who gets hot and bothered under the collar about that sort of thing, you should know that historically Muslims read books like, for example, Thomas à Kempis's The Imitation of Christ, and wrote about it and derived great pleasure and spiritual insight from reading it. A third of Thomas à Kempis's The Imitation of Christ is meditations upon Mary, Mother of God, which obviously I just leave. I just skip those bits. So my recommendation, whilst there are bits of this which clearly overstate the case from a Quranic point of view, just skip those bits and just take the rest, because the rest is really worth taking. And so that's really all I want to say. It does, in some places, as I say, read like a commentary on the Qur'an, an extremely intelligent one, a well thought through, reasoned position on how things really work. It is a fascinating read, and I think it's the sort of book that you may come to again and again. But also at this time, given the preponderance, the seeming ascendancy of the evil men, and they are evil, there's no question about it, it's very easy to get into a point of view where you see everything in terms of either waiting for miracles, or in some ways a hopelessness about it all. This is neither. This is a reasoned approach to understanding how things really are, so that you can deal with reality as it is. And I think that's what I like about this book most. So again, it's called Boethius. I'll just move it into the shot. This is Boethius, The Consolation of Philosophy. It's it's about 110, 112 pages long, the actual bulk of the book. The introduction, certainly in this edition, is worth a read. Not all of it will be totally useful to you. Not all of the notes will be useful to you either, unless you are a student of Latin philosophy. However, with those caveats to one side, I highly recommend this book if you're interested in equipping yourself for dealing with reality as it is, and as it has shown itself to be most graphically over the last year, then I recommend that you read Boethius, The Consolation of Philosophy. And with that said, I would just like to wish everyone a very happy new year, and that's all for now. If you're listening on YouTube, you can download my full translation of the Qur'an free using the button in the top right-hand corner, or buy the hard copy there at 10% less than on Amazon. I also encourage you to sign up for the Qur'anic Plus newsletter on the site to get occasional micro updates. You can download the audio from my YouTube videos to your mobile device using the links in the drop-down below. I recommend meetquranites.com to connect with other Qur'an-alone believers. Like if you like, comment if you have something constructive to say, and subscribe to get more each week. And use the link in the drop-down below to donate if you would like to help me keep doing this. And remember, this life is short, eternity is long. If you want good trees, plant good seeds.